All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into the construction industry's future.
Yeah, we're looking specifically at 2025. And to guide our journey, we've got this really interesting report. It's called uh, Construction Risk Insights Construction Industry Trends to Watch in 2025. And let me tell you, it's got some pretty eye-opening stuff,
Uh-huh.
especially for, well, anyone involved in building things, contractors, builders, all those folks. But really, it's relevant to everyone. I mean, we all live and work in buildings, right?
Absolutely. And what I find really fascinating about this report is how it um, kind of tackles the challenges head on. Like it acknowledges the growth, spending is up 6.5%, but then it immediately throws down the gauntlet. It's like, hold on, here are the hurdles you're going to have to jump over. It's a reality check for sure. Like, yeah, things are booming, BUT. And that but is a big one. We're talking inflation hitting material costs like crazy. Then there's the labor shortage. The industry needs something like 720,000 new skilled workers. I mean, 720,000, where are they going to find all those people? And then, of course, you've got the supply chain issues, which just seem to be a constant these days.
It really is this tangled web of problems. I mean, think about it. When you've got a shortage of skilled labor, wages go up, which naturally drives up the cost of every project. And then on top of that, you layer the supply chain disruptions. And we're not just talking about pandemic hangovers anymore. There's
Yeah.
geopolitical stuff happening, cyber attacks, messing things up. Even extreme weather is impacting global supply chains.
It's like trying to build a house of cards in a windstorm. Imagine, right? You're finally ready to build your dream home. You've got the plans, you've got the financing, and then bam, lumber deliveries are delayed by months. Why? Because a hurricane hit a port on the other side of the world. Your project's on hold, the price tag keeps going up. It's a nightmare.
It really highlights the need for a more resilient approach to construction. Adaptability is going to be key. Construction has always been about problem solving. But the scale of these challenges is just, well, it's forcing the industry to think differently.
Totally. So we've got these economic pressures, right? But the report doesn't stop there. It goes on to outline some pretty intense legal challenges as well.
This is where things get really interesting. I mean, we've all seen the news about those major structural failures. The Grenfell Tower fire in London, the Surfside condo collapse in Florida. Those were huge wake-up calls. And they've led to, like, a complete overhaul of building safety laws.
So we're not talking about pointless bureaucracy here. This is about preventing another disaster. It's about protecting lives.
Exactly. And the report talks about the ripple effects of those tragedies.
Yeah.
How they've led to mandatory incident reporting, especially for high-risk buildings. And there's this push to update old infrastructure that's been neglected. Plus, there's a growing emphasis on using more resilient building materials.
It's like the industry is saying, okay, we messed up and we're going to fix it. We're going to learn from these mistakes and make sure this never happens again. But it's not just about preventing those big catastrophic events. The report also points to a rise in contract breakdowns and insolvencies, even among some of the bigger players in the game.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. One company stumbles, and it can trigger this cascade of problems. Subcontractors get left hanging, suppliers will get paid, the whole project falls apart.
It's a delicate ecosystem, that's for sure, especially with all this uncertainty in the air. So we've got economic pressures, legal hurdles, and to add another layer of complexity, the report dives into the world of insurance. And let me tell you, it's not looking pretty.
Insurance is like the foundation of any construction project, right?
Right.
But as the risks increase, so do the costs. And that has this ripple effect that goes way beyond the construction site itself.
It impacts everyone, developers, homeowners, everyone. And the report keeps mentioning these nuclear verdicts. Honestly, it sounds kind of scary. Can you explain what that means? Like, what's a nuclear verdict in the context of construction?
Imagine a courtroom. A jury hands down a verdict that's so huge, so astronomical that it basically sends shockwaves through the entire industry. That's a nuclear verdict. We're talking tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars in damages, and they're becoming more and more common in construction cases.
Wow. Okay, so these nuclear verdicts are on the rise. But why? What's driving this trend?
It's a bunch of different factors all coming together. There's this growing distrust of big corporations, this idea that they can just absorb these massive payouts. And then there's this, I guess you could call it a desensitization to big numbers. Like those huge sums of money have kind of lost their impact in legal proceedings.
That's an interesting point. It's like we're so used to hearing about billions of dollars being thrown around that it doesn't even faze us anymore. But for a construction company facing a nuclear verdict, that's not just a number. It could be devastating.
It could bankrupt them, ruin their reputation. It's serious stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is, those higher insurance costs, they don't just impact the big guys. They trickle down to everyone. Smaller contractors, subcontractors, homeowners. Everyone ends up paying the price.
And then there are the project disputes, which the report says are also increasing, especially when the economy's struggling.
Yeah, when money's tight, people start pointing fingers.
It's human nature, I guess.
You get disputes over work quality, safety violations, all sorts of stuff.
Which leads to more lawsuits, more insurance claims. It's a mess. So we've got economic pressures, legal headaches, insurance nightmares, and as if that wasn't enough, we also have to factor in the environment.
Ah, yes. Climate change. The elephant in the room.
It's something we can't ignore, and the construction industry is right on the front lines.
Absolutely.
Most people get that climate change is happening, but they might not immediately connect it to something like construction.
Right.
So can you explain that connection? What's the link?
Well, think about it. Construction projects are, by their very nature, exposed to the elements. We're talking extreme weather events like hurricanes, floods, wildfires. Those can cause major damage to materials, equipment, even partially built structures.
And it's not just the immediate damage. These events can disrupt supply chains, cause delays, drive up costs. It's a ripple effect. The report actually mentions that 2024 was the fourth worst year on record for billion-dollar weather disasters in the U.S.
Yeah, that's pretty sobering.
It makes you realize that this isn't some far-off problem. It's happening now.
It's the new normal.
And it's not just about a few rainy days here and there. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the way the construction industry has to operate.
Exactly.
Building a skyscraper during hurricane season, for example. That's not just a logistical challenge anymore. It's potentially a recipe for disaster.
And it's not just hurricanes. Extreme heat is becoming a major issue as well.
It impacts worker productivity, creates safety hazards.
It's a whole new set of challenges.
So the industry's facing this perfect storm, right? Economic pressures, legal hurdles, insurance nightmares, environmental challenges.
It's a lot.
But the report doesn't just leave us hanging. It also offers some strategies for success, right?
That's right. It's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good. Because it was starting to feel a bit heavy there.
It's about being proactive, adaptable, thinking ahead. There are things construction companies can do to not just survive, but to thrive in this new world.
All right, let's dive into those strategies then. What are some of the key things companies need to be thinking about?
Well, it's like a shift from being reactive to proactive. Instead of just fixing problems after they happen. It's about anticipating the challenges and getting ahead of them.
I like that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Exactly. Especially when that pound of cure could be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit or a project that gets delayed by months.
Oof. Yeah, no thanks. So the report dives into some specific strategies, right? What are construction companies actually doing to navigate this crazy landscape?
Well, one of the big things is financial prudence. Having a solid financial plan, managing debt wisely, making sure there's steady cash flow, and building up those reserves, just in case.
So like a financial cushion to absorb those unexpected shocks.
Exactly.
Smart. And I bet strong contracts are more important than ever, too.
Absolutely. Clear communication, well-defined scopes of work, and having a clear process for resolving disputes, like baked right into the contract.
So you're preventing those disagreements from turning into full-blown legal battles.
That's the idea.
Makes sense. And what about safety training? That's always been crucial in construction, but it seems like it's even more important now.
Oh, absolutely. With all the focus on building safety, especially after those high-profile disasters, plus the added risks from climate change, having a well-trained workforce is more important than ever. It's not just about checking boxes for compliance anymore. It's about creating a real culture of safety on every job site.
Yeah, like empowering workers to spot potential hazards before they turn into accidents. It's got to be more than just a slogan, right? Safety has to be part of the company's DNA.
Couldn't agree more.
What about eco-friendly practices? That seems to be a big topic these days. How's that playing out in the construction industry?
Sustainability is huge. It's not just a nice-to-have anymore, it's a must-have. And the construction industry is definitely taking notice. There's a growing demand for green building materials, energy-efficient designs, and everyone's looking for ways to reduce waste.
So it's not just about being environmentally responsible, it's also good business, right?
Exactly. You're meeting the demands of clients who care about sustainability. It's a win-win.
I like that. Doing well by doing good. Now, one thing we haven't touched on yet is disaster preparedness. With climate change bringing more extreme weather events, that's got to be top of mind for construction companies.
Absolutely. It's about having plans in place to deal with those events. Hurricane-resistant designs, flood-proofing measures, even strategies for coping with extreme heat.
So it's not just about reacting to disasters after they happen. It's about being prepared beforehand.
Right. It's about minimizing disruptions, keeping workers safe.
Makes sense. Now, I want to circle back to something that really caught my attention. Those nuclear verdicts. They're clearly having a huge impact on the industry. But I think a lot of people outside of construction don't really grasp what's going on.
Yeah, it's a complex issue.
So what are the main drivers behind this trend?
Well, there's this thing called social inflation. It's basically this upward pressure on the cost of everything, including legal settlements and jury awards.
So it's like regular inflation, but for lawsuits.
Kinda, yeah.
Interesting.
It's driven by a bunch of factors: rising litigation costs, distrust of corporations, and even a desensitization to big sums of money.
Right, like those huge payouts just don't seem as shocking anymore.
Exactly.
And how's that impacting the construction industry specifically?
Well, it's driving up insurance costs like crazy. It's making it harder for companies to get adequate coverage. It's a vicious cycle.
And you mentioned litigation funding as another factor. Can you explain what that is?
It's basically venture capital for lawsuits. Third-party investors provide financing to plaintiffs, and in exchange, they get a share of the winnings.
So it's like an investment opportunity.
In a way, yeah.
But how does that contribute to these nuclear verdicts?
Well, it can give people access to justice who might not otherwise be able to afford it. But there's also a concern that it's leading to more frivolous lawsuits. And juries might be more likely to award huge sums of money because they know there's a deep-pocketed investor backing the plaintiff.
So there's a potential for abuse there.
Yeah, definitely something to watch.
And then there's the whole issue of public sentiment towards corporations.
Right.
You mentioned there's a growing distrust of big business.
There is this feeling that corporations put profits ahead of people, and that can definitely influence juries. They might be more sympathetic to the plaintiff, especially if they see the defendant as this big, faceless corporation.
It's like a David versus Goliath situation.
Yeah, kinda.
And in the construction industry, that can be a recipe for disaster.
For sure.
So with all these factors at play, it sounds like construction companies are facing a lot of risk.
They are, and the cost of insurance is just skyrocketing.
So what can they do? How can they protect themselves in this environment?
Well, prioritizing safety is huge. Having strong safety programs, providing ongoing training for employees, creating that culture of safety we talked about.
Yeah, making it part of the company's DNA.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting workers, it's also about protecting the company from potential lawsuits. A good safety record can be a strong defense in court.
Makes sense. What else can they do?
Meticulous documentation is crucial. Contracts, change orders, safety records, inspection reports, everything needs to be documented clearly and accurately.
So if a dispute does arise, they've got all the evidence they need.
Exactly.
It's like building a fortress of documentation.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's not just about having the documents, right? They need to be organized, easily accessible.
Absolutely.
What about insurance? It sounds like it's getting harder and more expensive to get good coverage.
It is. But there are things companies can do. Working with experienced insurance brokers who understand the construction industry is key.
So it's about finding the right partner who can guide them through the process.
Exactly.
And what about risk management in general? Any advice there?
Well, companies need a comprehensive risk management plan. It's about identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then developing strategies to mitigate those risks.
So it's a proactive approach.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about preventing losses, right? It's also about being prepared to respond effectively if something does go wrong.
Exactly.
It's like construction companies are becoming like risk management experts on top of everything else they have to do.
Yeah, it's a whole new layer of complexity. They have to be constantly looking ahead, scanning the horizon for potential problems.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges, but I want to shift gears for a second and talk about the positive side. Because despite all these headwinds, construction is still growing. It's a vital part of our economy.
Absolutely. And there's so much innovation happening. New technologies, new materials, even new ways of thinking about construction itself.
Like necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Totally.
So out of all this, what really stood out to you? What was your most surprising thing I learned today moment?
Honestly, it was that concept of desensitization to large verdicts. Such a subtle thing, but it has these massive implications.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. We're so bombarded with news of these huge sums of money, billions here, millions there, that it all just starts to feel meaningless.
Exactly. And it creates this real challenge for businesses. Like, how do you even plan for risk when the potential cost keeps escalating?
Right, it's like the goalposts are constantly moving. So, what does all this mean for our listener, whether they're in the construction industry or not?
I think the key takeaway is awareness. Understanding these trends, the economic pressures, the legal changes, the insurance issues, the environmental factors, it helps you make better decisions.
Yeah, informed decisions.
Whether you're investing in real estate, hiring a contractor, even just voting on local building codes.
It's all connected. Like a hurricane in the Pacific can delay your home renovation project in Iowa.
Exactly.
It's a complex world out there.
It is.
So we've talked about the challenges, the risks, the strategies for success. But there's one question that keeps coming back to me. With all this pressure, all this disruption, is the future of construction even sustainable?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Right.
But the construction industry is incredibly resilient. It's always faced challenges, and it's always found ways to adapt.
Yeah, the need for shelter, for infrastructure, that's not going away. So
Exactly.
the question isn't if construction will continue, it's how it will adapt.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And I have a feeling that how is going to involve a lot of exciting changes.
Oh, yeah. New technologies, new materials, new ways of thinking.
It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of construction. It's a complex and ever-changing landscape, but it's one that's full of opportunities as well. So stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.